Welcome back to Live from the Lab. This is the podcast where we break down the science of strength, performance, and training so you can get stronger, move better, and maximize any potential that you have. I'm your host, Jason Gonzalez, and today we're diving into a topic that most lifters overlook, and that is why strength isn't just about size. It's about having a neural edge, and we'll explain what that means. We're going to uncover why you can gain strength without gaining muscle, how your brain and nervous system play a critical role in getting stronger, and how you can train smarter to tap into that neural edge. If you've been struggling with plateaus, if you want to get stronger without necessarily getting bigger, or if you just want to optimize your training, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. Let's start with a question. Why do some people look incredibly muscular but aren't actually that strong? And why can some athletes who don't look like bodybuilders or have a large amount of muscle move massive amounts of weight? And I bet you've seen this before, and I'm a product of that. A power lifter, Olympic lifter, rock climber, who seems to be able to generate an insane amount of force, but they don't look like the biggest guy in the gym. And that's because muscle size and strength are related and can be related, but they are not the same thing. So a little bit of a background. I power lifted for 5 years in the 148-pound class. And I always use myself as an example, specifically when training the female population, when they fear lifting weights is going to get them big and bulky. So then I say, hey, I power lifted for 5 years. I weigh 148 pounds. I still weigh 148 pounds. I'm not somebody who looks massive by any means, but I can lift a great amount of weight. And I mean, if it matters, my squat was 425, my bench was 325, these are in pounds, and my deadlift was 465 pounds. So at 148 pounds, those numbers would seem to be extremely heavy. And again, not looking huge, but I had the strength. Now, when somebody says muscle hypertrophy, muscle hypertrophy is basically getting bigger muscles. It does contribute to strength and to being strong, but it's not the only factor. The nervous system is the real driver of strength, and that's what a lot of people are missing in their training. If you've ever been frustrated because you're lifting more weight but not seeing much change in your muscle size, don't worry about that, because a lot of that comes from you need to eat a lot to fuel the muscles and their size. Muscles need a lot of calories to grow. This is where when I tell specifically female athletes or females in general, do not be scared to gain muscle if you're lifting heavy, because you have to be eating a lot of calories or a lot more calories to complement that. And a long-term part of strength gains is your nervous system adapting to whatever stressor you're placing on it. So again, don't be scared to get big and bulky just from lifting heavy, but you will get strong 100%, because again, it's a nervous system adaptation, not necessarily a muscle adaptation in a way, but we'll kind of get to that. How is strength actually built? Let's talk about the role of the nervous system. Strength, again, isn't just about how big your muscles are. It's about how efficiently your brain communicates with your muscles. And let me break this down. When you start training or working out, your body doesn't immediately build new muscle. And in fact, when you work out, muscle actually breaks down. It's not built until after the fact. Again, once you eat a lot of food after you work out. So when you're in the gym, when you're lifting, Your muscle breaks down. It's not building. Your nervous system, so when you work out, your nervous system gets better at recruiting muscle fibers you already have. This is why beginners make such rapid progress in strength, because those gains come from neural adaptations, not muscle growth. They're not building muscle. Their brain is getting better at recruiting the muscle fibers it needs for whatever lift you're doing. So here's a deeper look at what happens inside your body when you train. You increase motor units. You increase the recruitment of the motor units. So motor units come from muscle fibers. Your body learns how to activate more muscle fibers at the same time. Think of it like a sports team. If only a few players are working or playing, you won't perform very well and you may not win. But if everybody is on the field and plays together, you get maximum output and you get the most efficient way to play and to win that game. Along with an increased motor unit recruitment, you get better motor unit synchronization. Your nervous system basically gets better at coordinating muscle contractions, and the result of that is going to be a smoother, more powerful contraction. The third thing is something that is like reduced inhibition from the nervous system, reduced inhibition from the nervous system. So basically, your body has safety mechanisms to prevent injury, but over that time, training teaches your nervous system that it's safe to produce more force. So it allows for a greater amount of strength when you teach your body that, hey, it's okay to get to this specific point or add this amount of stress onto my body. And the last thing is it increases your neural drive. So your nervous system gets better at sending rapid signals to your muscles, making you more explosive. And this is why heavy lifting and explosive movements can make you stronger, even if your muscle size doesn't change much. Your nervous system is literally upgrading itself. Your nervous system. Now, let's talk about the neural edge. So that is part of the neural edge, kind of what I talked about. That's the nervous system, right? Let's talk about the neural edge in sports and performance. Neural efficiency is what separates, in my opinion, good athletes from great athletes. Olympic weightlifters can move insane, crazy high amounts of load at high speeds because they train their nervous system to be that efficient. That's all they're doing in the gym with their cleans. And if you don't know what Olympic weightlifting is, it's clean and jerk and snatch. You see it in the Olympics. And that's all they're doing is they're training maximal force production through that range of motion. And they're training their nervous system to be efficient at that movement. Same goes for a deadlift, same goes for a squat, same goes for a lunge, a chin-up, whatever that is. In order to be strong, you need to recruit the right muscle fibers and the right amount of muscle fibers, and you can train that. Another example is elite sprinters. They recruit maximum force in a literal split second, which is why they generate so much power and they don't look necessarily like bodybuilders. Some sprinters do look like bodybuilders. It's crazy. But a third example is a gymnast. They can control their entire body with an insane amount of precision because their nervous system is so fine-tuned for that strength and that coordination. It's not the amount of muscle they have. It's they trained that nervous system to become really, really good at being a gymnast. And even in everyday life, training your nervous system can make a huge difference. If you want to feel more explosive, more powerful, stronger, you can do that 100% without putting on unnecessary mass. You have to train strength, not hypertrophy, and also not eat an insane amount or even a little bit of an excess after you work out or for a longer period of time. So let's talk about training strategies to maximize this neural edge. And you already know, we already talked about why that neural efficiency matters. So training it, I'm going to give you 5 key strategies on how to train to maximize your neural edge. Number 1 is you do need to lift heavy. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you just start working out, I like to separate this into training ages. So you have, somebody who's been lifting 0 to 2 years, somebody who's been lifting 2 to 5 years, and somebody who's been lifting 5+ years. And that's on a consistent basis. And that training age dictates how much load I would potentially put on somebody versus how much technical help that they would need during that time. And obviously, it's very independent on who's in front of you and who you're training. So take this with a grain of salt, these strategies. So number 1 is lift heavy. And we're talking 80% plus of your 1 rep max. So if you don't know how to calculate that, if your 1 rep max is 100 pounds for easy math, 80% of that, you take 100, you multiply that by 0.80, and it's going to give you 80. So essentially you'd be training with 80 pounds, 85 pounds, 90 pounds. And then it's the higher you get with the weight, the more your reps are going to have to adjust, right? You're not going to be able to do as many reps, but heavy weights do force your nervous system to recruit more motor units and maximize force production, which we talked about, maximizing that neural edge. You can keep your reps low, and that could be anywhere in the 1 to 5 rep range, and keep your rest periods long. It's 2 to 5 minutes, because you want to avoid fatigue. We're trying to maximize your neural edge, not fatigue your neural edge. All right. Number 2 is do speed and explosive training. There's terms in strength conditioning that are termed strength, speed, strength, etc. In other words, if you don't use those terms, it's moving lighter loads as fast as possible. Think of doing a box jump, think of doing a weighted jump, think of doing Olympic lifts, think of squatting or deadlifting, but moving that with intent. There's a couple different strategies I like to use when moving things with intent. Is if you use metal plates specifically, you could do this with rubber plates, but when you stand up from a squat, let's say, you want to hear the metal clank together. That's kind of insinuating and telling the coach or yourself, hey, I moved that pretty fast. If you have a VBT unit, so a velocity-based training unit, which I do, I like to hook that to the bar, and we can show that bar is moving at different speeds. So that does give good feedback to the athlete or whoever's training that, hey, I am moving that fast, or I'm not moving that fast and I could be moving it faster. I need to adjust the weight, whatever that is. If you only lift heavy slowly, you'll miss out on a lot of those neural adaptations or that muscle fiber recruitment or that nerve signaling to the muscle fiber. You can miss out on potentially a lot of that explosive and strength gains. Number 3 is you can actually use isometric training for this neural edge or this neural drive. Holding isometric training, if you don't know, it's holding a position and while your muscle is contracted, but it's not lengthening or shortening. So it's contracted, but not lengthening or shortening. You could do an isometric at different lengths, but just make sure you're holding that like you're holding a bicep curl kind of 50% of the way, and you're not moving, but the bicep is fatiguing. And you can also I like to use isometrics in terms of a potentiation thing. So when it comes to strength, you can use potentiation, which basically is like you're priming the central nervous system to produce force after doing that priming movement. So if you use an isometric, you can hold a heavy load in a static position, like I said, or an isometric, and that'll prime your nervous system for strength. So you do an isometric, you do a strength movement, and then let's say you do like a plyometric movement. Studies do show that isometrics can enhance force output and more motor unit recruitment. Number 4 is you could use contrast methods or complex training, and that is pairing heavy lifts with explosive movements, kind of like what I talked about the isometrics it primes for the next exercise coming up. And you can think about it, contrast training as going from black to white or white to black. You're going from heavier to light. You could also go lighter to heavy, but typically in this sense, you would go heavier to light. So you would do a heavy squat and you'd pair that with a jump squat. And it kind of tricks your nervous system into a greater activation. And that is known as that potentiation, or PAP, which stands for post-activation potentiation. And this technique is used by top strength coaches. Myself, I use it, and it can improve athletic performance. And the fifth thing is you use frequent low rep strength work. This kind of circles back to number one, but practicing heavy lifts more frequently, and you don't want to overload it with volume, and you don't want to go too crazy. You want to leave a little bit of a buffer. What I mean by that is you don't want to load up 95% of your weight and try and hit 3 reps, and you're just going to complete failure the whole time. That's not going to make your nervous system better. It's going to fatigue that nervous system and not make you better, but practice those heavy lifts more frequently. And it will help ingrain motor patterns, especially at that heavier load. And again, circling back to this neural edge, making sure that your nervous system knows what to fire, when to fire, based on whatever lift you're doing. Sorry, a little coffee break. But another thing is, and I tell this to a lot of people that I train in terms of strength, is strength is the greater driver of strength is it's a skill. So the better you can get at the skill, the more your strength will improve. So skill acquisition is the primary driver of strength. And just like skill, just like you play soccer, you play basketball, you play volleyball, you want to get better at your hit, your shot, your bat, whatever you want to get better at, strength is the exact same way. You need repetition to refine that skill. And those are the 5. If these principles apply whether you're a powerlifter, an athlete, or just somebody looking to maximize strength without excessive muscle gain. Now, some mistakes that could kill your strength gains. This is basically what not to do if you want to maximize your neural efficiency. Number 1 is you're trying to chase muscle size at the expense of strength. If all you do is high rep hypertrophy work, to repeat, hypertrophy is muscle building, you're missing out on neural adaptations. You need to balance both of those for long-term progress. Number 2 is not training explosively. If you're always lifting slow and controlled, you're not training your nervous system to generate the force rapidly like we were looking for. Number 3 is you're ignoring maximal strength work. That's that 80% plus that I was talking about. You just won't get the same neural benefits if you never lift heavy. You need near maximal loads. Again, near maximal loads, not maximal loads, to fully engage your nervous system. And number 4 is overtraining and fatigue. Overtraining goes back to that you are doing too much. You're lifting at too heavy of a load. You're doing too many reps. Neural fatigue is a real thing. If you're consistently or constantly grinding in the gym, your nervous system won't function at peak efficiency. You're just going to always be fatigued. And by avoiding these 4 mistakes, you'll see real strength gains that will actually last. So that wraps it up. Strength isn't just about muscle size. It's about how well your nervous system recruits, coordinates, and fires your muscles. That's the neural edge that we're talking about. So if you want to get stronger without necessarily bigger, or if you want to maximize your performance, you need to train your nervous system strategically. Incorporate heavy lifts, explosive movements, and neural-focused training into your workout routine, and you'll be surprised at just how powerful you can become. If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend or somebody who needs to hear this information on this episode. Don't forget to leave a review, subscribe, just so you never miss an episode. And if you want more tips, updates, or just to connect, you can follow me on Instagram at @repthereds, and you'll get more insights straight from the lab. See you next time.